Really nice to see you. What I thought we would talk about today is that you can think about what do you live for? What makes life worth living for? You just think about it for a minute. What gives value to your life? What's most important to you? And you know, sometimes people say, "Oh, I'm sorry, we haven't hung out. It's been really busy." I think I read this on Instagram because that's where I get all my material from. But that really just means that the person doesn't value you. Because everybody has the same amount of time in a day, about 24 hours. And then we devote time in that day to the people and things that we think are valuable. And so when somebody says, "Oh, I'm sorry, we haven't connected, I've just been so busy," you know, what they're really saying is, "I've been busy doing things that are more important to me than you." Do you guys follow this? And generally that creates a problem when they're on your list of people you'd like to spend time with, but you're not on their list. Follow that? They're on your list, but you're not on their list, and that you feel slighted because you've got 24 hours of your day, and you want to make an hour to spend with that person, but they're too busy to spend time with you. Anyway, you think about what you value the most, and the easy way to do that is you just think about what you don't want to give up no matter what. If you have to start cutting things out of your life, what is it that you're not going to cut out of your life? And that thing which you won't cut out of your life, that's the thing you value the most. Do you guys follow that? It's actually really simple, right? The thing I value the most is the thing that I'm not going to let go of or get rid of. The thing I'm going to keep no matter what. So then you sort of got two possibilities. One thing is that you value a thing the most. And then the other one is you value people the most. Now, if you value a thing the most, right? There's maybe one exception to this. But if you value a thing the most, then 99.9% of things can be bought with money. So if you value a thing the most, what you're really saying is you value money. You follow that? There is one thing I can think of that money can't buy. You know what it is? Time. Health. Time in the form of old age that makes everyone bow, brings everyone to their knees. That's the one thing that money can't buy. It's not exactly true. There's all sorts of things modern science can do to extend your life, extend your quality of life. But it's a losing battle, and it's a lost cause because everybody dies in due course of time. So what do you value the most? And the way to understand that is what won't you give up no matter what? And then that's going to be one of two things. It's going to be a thing or a person. It's going to be things or people. If it's things, it's just all based on money. And you're not thinking about it properly. If it's things, you're just not thinking clearly enough. Because if what you value is things, imagine if you had tons of money, and gold, and diamonds, and rubies, tons of cars, and this and that, and there was no one to enjoy them with, and you were all by yourself in the world, like the Omega Man in that 70s movie. And, or, like the modern day version of it, like, what's it called? The zombie flick that, Will Smith starred in. I Am Legend, yeah, it's kind of a modern day Omega Man. In case you're not familiar with the history of films. What do you like? That sounds hellish. You have the best game ever, but you gotta play it by yourself. It sounds awful. And so, yeah, we all crave and need the milk of human kindness to be nourished. Pretty sure that's Shakespeare. It's just too good to be from anybody else. We all need the milk of human kindness as our nourishment. So if you value things, you're just not thinking clearly enough about it. If you value time, then you're up against the existential dilemma. That's great. It's a great place to be. Realizing the futility of all of your material endeavors. Krishna identifies himself with time. Kalo asmi lokakshay krit pravridham. Mrityu sarva haraschaham. I am death which takes everything away. I am time, the great destroyer. And so this idea, there's an indefatigable force in the universe that destroys all things. That's entropy, that's time. And Krishna identifies himself with it in the Gita. So that whole idea, I value time, but I can't purchase it really, ultimately. Maybe I can purchase a little bit of it, but it seems to be like there's a very small commodity of it, and I can't get as much as I want. And even the quality of life, the people are living for longer, but their quality of life doesn't, it seems like the last, like all my relatives, they all live to like their late 90s, but their quality of life goes to hell the last 5 or 10 years. They're senile and they can't do anything. And it's almost like you probably would have been better checking out, before you became incontinent and couldn't think clearly. Better go out on a shield and, on your own terms and just, waste away, have your mind turn to mush, living like a vegetable for the last few years, while I don't know what you want to call it, the geriatric industrial complex bleeds you out of hundreds of thousands of dollars, 10 grand a month, giving you a really like subhuman standard of life until you got nothing left. It's like amazing. You save your whole life and it just gets eaten up. Like huge, like just $1 million in 5 years or something like that. Just gone, a couple $1 million in a decade if you've got that. So yeah, what do you value the most? You're like, let me think about that. Simple question. What won't you give up no matter what? That's what you value the most. It's going to be one of two things. It's going to be things or people, If it's time, you're on another track. You're on the existential dilemma track. And that's a good place to be. If that's not it, it's either things or people. If it's things, it's money. And you're a fool, because money without people sucks. And the other option is you value people. Now we can say, I value a cause, right? Say I value a cause, right? That's also the same way that if you value things, you ultimately value money. If you value a cause, what do you ultimately value? People. People who are helped by that cause, the people with whom you engage in that cause. You follow? It always goes back to people. So if you want to say I value a cause, that doesn't, it's not a spanner in the works of the system I'm introducing here. That's easy. Things is money. Money is foolish, because money without people is a waste of time. If you value time, that's great. You should really start to look into spirituality, because if you're trying to buy time, you can't. And whatever little time you can buy, it's not going to be enough. Losing battle, lost cause. And the other one is you value people. That ultimately leads to the same existential dilemma, because the people you love also get ripped away from you, rent asunder in front of your very eyes, as do you. The whole material world gets thrown in a charnel house and ground up, spit out. And so that also leads you to the existential dilemma. But if you value people and you want to say, oh, I value a cause, your cause is just ultimately people. Either the people you help or the people you engage in the cause with. Do you guys follow that? And then, when you get into people and you value people, that gets into a whole other conversation. What do you value about those people? Do you value what you get from them? If that's what it is, then you got the E word. Exploitation. If your relationship with people is because of what you get out of them, then it's exploitative. It's a dead end. Then if you value what you're able to give to them, that's got a couple of options. That can either be codependent and unhealthy and escapist. That becomes a dead end pretty quick. There's a person who is dedicated to somebody else, but not in a healthy way, in a way that stops them from growing, cripples them, stunts their growth. And then the other one is you're dedicated to helping people in a healthy way. And that's a good place to be. That's a good place to be. You can help lots of people. And it's, it's like, if you got to take all the pictures yourself, maybe we take a few hundred pictures. But if you've got a few hundred people and you teach them all how to take pictures, then you take thousands, tens of thousands of pictures, hundreds of thousands. You can really do something amazing. And so if your happiness and what you value is helping people, you can help a lot of people in different ways. That's never ends. There's some magic there. That ultimately leads you to realizing, well, what's the best way I can help people? And even if I help people materially, how much does it really help them? Like if I give a new shirt to somebody who's drowning, so they drown in a clean shirt, is that really so valuable? And so if I help somebody materially, but it doesn't really help them ultimately, how much philanthropic work have I really done? From that angle, giving somebody a Bhagavad Gita is better than giving them food. It's not more immediate. So it's like if a heroin addict comes into you and they've OD'd, you need to bring them back because they're going to die. So that's the most immediate thing you need to do for them. But if that's all you do for them, then you just set them up to, or you give them some money, then they go out and they go out and get high again, and then they kill themselves that time. Or they lead a horrible existence for a few more days, and then they kill themselves. So what's more valuable, curing somebody of their addiction or stopping them from ODing one time? You follow this? And so anything you do materially to help people's bodies ultimately does not solve the problem of existence, namely that everything is ripped apart in due course of time. Did you follow that? Alternatively, even though it's not as immediate, if you can manage to not have people ODing on you while you're preaching the Gita to them, like selling a book while they're ODing and dying, if you can imagine, if you manage to make that space where you're not neglecting where you're somebody's dying because you're telling them the Gita is more important or the spiritual knowledge is more important, and therefore you let them die right there in front of you. That starts to get weird. Sometimes there's immediate stuff that you have to contend with. But if you can find that space where you dealt with the immediate stuff, and then you can hone in and help them with the real deep stuff, that's infinitely more valuable. It's like you give somebody a mango and you feed them once, but if you teach them how to farm, then you feed them forever. Yeah, but they still die. Get stomach cancer, can't digest food, die in their own bile. With massive ulcers leaking into their body, stomach acid poisoning them. You know what I mean? It's still game over. But if you teach somebody that they're the soul and not the body, and you help them with that, you help them to cultivate that, then you've really given somebody the gift that keeps on giving, and you've exponentially opened up the door, not only in terms of the amount of people you can help, but the length of time you can help them for, because you can help them for infinity. And you just crack the code and solve the puzzle. So, what you value the most is what won't you give up. What won't you give up is what you value the most. It's an easy way to know. And it's an easier question to ask. The other one's too abstract, and people try to get too fancy with it. But if you ask people what won't you give up, that blue collar, simple, bare bones, straightforward, honest, American, Midwest, that question gets to the heart of the issue. And then you either value things or people. If you value things, you ultimately value money. If you value money the most, you're a fool. Because money without people sucks. If you value time, you're onto something, and you just realize that it's a lost cause. And so you might as well go for transcendence at that point. If you value people, don't think valuing a cause gets you out of people and it becomes a defeater to my system. Fits neatly into my system. Causes are people. So you value a cause, you value people. And then how you value people. You're trying to get things out of them, you're an exploiter. You're trying to give, you might be codependent. It's a healthy way. That's a wonderful thing. You can expand without limit, but everybody dies. It leads you back to that existential dilemma, and you start giving people spirituality, and then that opens up the door, not only in terms of the amount of people you can give to, but it also opens up the door that you can give to them for infinity. Do you guys follow this? I think that selflessness really means that you care about giving more than you care about receiving. Not that you don't care at all about receiving. And so, I haven't worked all this out in my head. I just thought of it when I sat down. I had a minute while the kirtan was going on. And so, what I just said to you was what I thought through. But now I got into stuff I didn't really think through, so I'm going to think it through with you guys right now. We'll see how I do. As far as I can see, love that asks for nothing in return is weak and shallow. The nature of love is that it creates vulnerability. Love depends on empathy. Empathy depends on putting yourself in the other person's shoes, thinking about things from their perspective. It's based on you having thought about things from your own perspective as a starting point. In order for me to empathize with Ross, I have to have felt certain ways myself. And I can think about things from your point of view because I notice things in you and I compare them to things in me. And I'm able to put myself in your shoes because I've walked in my shoes. But without any life experience myself, I can't empathize with you. For instance, if you say to a woman, oh, I get it, how it feels to menstruate. I think a legitimate answer would be like, no, you don't. I understand the pain of giving birth. And like, really? Have you given birth? Well, no, but I watched some videos in my Lamaze class. So yeah, not the same thing, buddy. Even amongst women, there's women who have given birth and there's women who have not given birth. They're two different categories of human beings. Women who haven't given birth also can't say, I empathize, I understand what it's like. No, you don't. And so your ability to empathize with people, to a large extent, depends on your having experienced similar things in your own life. There's some room for extrapolation where you build upon pre-existing statistical models and then you're able to extrapolate into the future based on the idea that things continue. And so I've suffered pain that was like a number 10 on a scale of 1 to 10 and screamed, and I'm watching you scream, so I'm assuming, oh, it must be similar to what I experienced. I got my arm cut off, you gave birth, so it must be the same kind of pain. And it's like, there's something to that. You follow? So we can extrapolate to some extent. But unless you've walked a lot of miles in your own shoes through a lot of different life experiences, you can't really empathize with other people. Did you follow this? That's why older people make better therapists. At least if you're into there's like two kinds of therapists. There's a super smart therapist who is almost like a Machiavellian, Silence of the Lambs, is that guy's name? Hannibal Lecter, Machiavellian, like evil genius who just shrinks your problems and is able to coldly diagnose you almost with no emotion whatsoever, but better than the machine because they understand the human condition enough to be able to explain what your disease is, what your mental illness is, what ails you. That's one type of therapist. They're just clinical. They're almost like a doctor that just, coldly examines the situation and gives you almost no emotion. Your average, psychoanalyst, that was privilege. Just absolute detachedness. Just nothing phases you. You're just like a Zen automaton. The other type of therapist is that you are parental and loving and nurturing. That one depends on empathy. The other one depends on smarts, along with some kind of evil, disassociated variation of empathy. But the real kind of like compassion, deep empathy, that requires you to have some life experience. So, love is fundamentally based on empathy. Empathy is based on feeling with another person. Feeling with another person makes you vulnerable. You become involved. To be like, I love you and I don't care whether you live or die. And if you die, it just won't affect me even one bit. I love you, and if you stab me in the heart, it won't even just not even one bit. Will it change the way I feel about you? Well, then you must really not feel that deeply about me. You follow? So a deity that had that type of love would be deficient, just as a human being that would have that type of love would be deficient. And a real love, by its very nature, requires some degree of empathy, some degree of vulnerability, some degree of relativity where you are affected by the person that you love. Did you guys follow up? So then when I talk about real love, deep love, pure love, selfless love, for me, what that means is not that nothing the person does matters one bit. It's almost like that's not love. It's like some kind of like weird, like sociopathic compassion. Like you're like a sociopathic do-gooder, you know? You know what I mean? Like you're watching babies die and you're passing out food to starving children. It's just like means nothing to you whether they like take the food or not or what happens then. You're just through doing your duty. That's like all that matters to you. Like if everybody spits on you while you're doing it, like it just doesn't matter to you at all. And if nobody eats the food, it doesn't matter to you. And or like if they eat the food but they hate you for it and like plot your murder, like it doesn't matter to you. Like I just, I guess theoretically you could say if my only happiness is that they benefit. So maybe if they eat your food and then plot your murder, you're just totally fine with that. It doesn't bother you at all. Years of your life, you're meeting the same people every day. You're feeding them, and then like one day they murder you, and you're like, it does not even one bit disturb you. Like, no. That actually sounds fundamentally flawed. Like you never let yourself actually become vulnerable. You never let yourself actually empathize. You never actually cared enough to allow yourself to become relativized and affected by the person. But love without relativity doesn't exist. Therefore, an ultimate deity that was capable of love would also have to have a degree of relativity and empathy and vulnerability. And that conception of God is Krishna. A deity that is truly capable of reciprocal love. Like my understanding is that Krishna is deeply affected by his mother's love, deeply affected by the love of his friends, and deeply affected by Radharani's love. In fact, Krishna himself says, when I see Radharani, just seeing her makes me joyous, and then she sees me, and like I become like more ecstatic, and like we go back and forth. Actually, that actually kind of defeats my point, because each one of them is finding their happiness and the joy of the other. So that's a little bit of a spanner in my works, because our tradition does glorify selfless love. And so that's what I'm trying to reconcile. So that particular example, scratch that one. It was I went down the wrong road there. I was doing the math I was saying. You guys wouldn't know it. You guys would think I was making some profound point, but I was able to look a few moves ahead and say I was checkmating myself. So rather than diluting you and making it sound cool, I'm just going to own it, fall on my sword. Krishna says, when my friends defeat me when we wrestle and play. When my mother chastises me, feeds me with the milk from her breast, and when my lover chastises me in a sulky mood, that steals my mind from the reverent hymns of the Vedas. It attracts Krishna's mind. In fact, praying or love is called Krishna Karshi. It attracts Krishna, the attractive one. So it attracts the all-child. So Krishna is Karshit. He's attracted by the love of his devotees. That makes the point I want to make. Now I got to reconcile with the selfless love thing. So when I think of selfless love, what that means for me is that I care more about your happiness than I do about my own. If I care nothing about, here's the point I was trying to make. Here you go. Now I'm like, watch it as I'm going to be like an evil genius right now. I think. We'll find out. I have to say it for me to know if it works or not. Here we go. If I care more about you than I do about myself, that makes my love selfless. However, in order to care more about you than I do about myself, I have to actually care about how I'm treated. I have to empathize. I have to be vulnerable, and you have to matter to me. Otherwise, without that, I'm not able to love you in the first place. Therefore, even the ability to love depends on a self-conception, depends on knowing what it's like to be loved, depends on like appreciating that love, and then you can then feel that for somebody else. But empathy is ultimately based on our own personal life experience. Therefore, love is based on our personal life experience, and you really have to be loved before you can love back. And for you to love somebody powerfully and selflessly, you have to be able to accept love, and that enables you to then love people profoundly. And so the heart of selfless love is not selfish love, but is the ability to receive love. And so what selfless love really means is I care more about your happiness than I do about my own. Not that I don't care at all about my own happiness in any way, shape, or form. Maybe I find my happiness in your happiness, but the baseline of all that is that I understand what it's like to receive love. I'm vulnerable to love. Love affects me. Otherwise, I can't actually understand what that is to give it to you. Did you guys follow that? I'm just going to say it all over again. I think I made sense, but I want to make sure I made sense. So I'm just going to say it one more time. And so let's just go through the whole thing. I just want to try to mind map it in my own head. What do you value the most? What won't you give up? It's either things or people. If it's things, it's money. If it's people, it's either selfish or selfless. If it's time, you're in an existential dilemma. If it's selfish or selfless love, it both leads you to the existential dilemma because there's a limit to everything in this material world. The ability to love selflessly meets its match with the fact that everybody around you is going to die. So what you got to do at some point, you got to love people selflessly, spiritually. In that case, you can selflessly help people and love people infinitely, forever. There's no limit to it. And that's how you crack the code. Love depends on empathy. Empathy depends on personal experience. To love another, you have to receive love yourself. Otherwise, you don't understand it. Therefore, Krishna must be capable of receiving love. And Krishna himself says, when my lover chastises me, when my mother punishes me, feeds me, when my friends wrestle with me and say, you're not a big man, I'm stronger than you. When they become so beguiled by love, they just throw themselves into a relationship with me as equals or even as superior to me because they just love me that much, they forget I'm God. That steals my mind. It attracts me. And I'm like, I want to run away from the rituals of the Vedas to get over there and receive that kind of love. That proves Krishna is capable of accepting love. And so when we talk about selfless love, which is also glorified all over our scriptures, what it really means is that you care more about the other person you do than yourself, but not in a sycophantic, codependent way, in a healthy way, where you've learned this art of it's not all about you and you're actually a part of something bigger than yourself, which means you're a part of a group of people bigger than yourself, and you find happiness in seeing them grow and flourish. And that chastens you and ennobles you and emboldens you and brings out all the qualities in you in this world, and it goes on forever. And Krishna is even emboldened and nourished and grows through such love. And ultimately, that's what everybody's looking for in this world. And so I said, what do you value most? This is what people value the most. They value love the most. They might not understand it. You might have to go through a process of distillation to get them to that point, like I did with you guys a bunch of times. But ultimately, everybody gets there. If you go through it enough with them, you can get everybody to this point. It's not difficult. And then, it's like everybody's looking for love in the wrong place. From people at the wrong level of development. Like from the wrong platform. And therefore we suffer. But people's propensity to love, their desire to love, their interest in loving, their need for love, the fact that they went and looked at all the wrong places is actually a good sign. It means that they're like alive and they're looking for something. They're just looking in the wrong place. And in a lot of ways, helping somebody means helping to teach them how to look for love in the right way, in the right situations. And after they've received enough, they can give back, and then they can get to a place where they care more about helping people than they do about themselves, and that becomes selfless love, and that is something worth living for. And selfless love isn't just this, I don't know, this kind of pie in the sky thing you say. It's got teeth to it. You can sink your teeth into it. It's got teeth. It sticks. It makes sense. It works. And what it really boils down to is I care more about the other person's growth and happiness than I do about the pleasure they bring to me. Not that they don't give me any joy or happiness, not that they couldn't hurt me, but just that it's more actually about them than it is about me, and that enables me to always choose the happy. But a love that's just selfless, that asks for nothing in return, it sounds almost like the poet's ideal or something like that. That doesn't actually make sense, because the very existence of love depends on empathy, which depends on life experience. And to be able to love means you have to have been loved. That's the only way you can do it. And you can't even reach out to love somebody without, in the process of loving themselves, becoming vulnerable yourself. And therefore, it's better to have loved and lost and never to have loved all, which I'm also assuming must come from Shakespeare, because in the English language, he's sort of the master of all this stuff. He also talked about wearing your heart on your sleeve. That comes from him. He's got all sorts of other just wonderful sayings that we say in English to this day, because that's how brilliant he was. All right. I think it worked. I think I made my points. IGTV, thank you very much.